Welcome to the Remedial Film Class Halloween special, as Travis and George try to convince me that movies that they like are actually better than the 1978 Halloween. Witness as I destroy them with arguments to celebrate John Carpenter's classic as the best possible movie for you to watch tonight. That will be my stance is, the movie you propose is not the right choice. Tonight, you should be watching Halloween instead. And I will tell you why any movie is not the right movie tonight. You need to watch Halloween 78.
Well, hold on a
Wait,
second.
that was not the argument.
I feel like you have moved the goalposts
that's
on us significantly because on Halloween,
Clearly,
Evil
this
dies
is the
tonight.
movie.
on Halloween, I believe, Dan, that this is the best movie
Well,
to watch on
absolutely.
Halloween.
Let me clarify that you can listen to this episode on Christmas. You can listen to this episode on April 15th if you want, Tax Day. And still know that the arguments stand true. So yes, ironically, coincidentally, it is Halloween when we launch this episode. But I'm not concerned that these arguments wouldn't hold the same weight any other day of the calendar year.
All right. Then let's have at it.
Okay.
Hit me with your
Alright.
best shot. Fire away.
Away. Wait, isn't that the song no longer being sung? I think the movie I would say would be the best argument is Alien. And I have to say, when I think about what is good about Halloween, now you threw the curveball being on Halloween. Obviously, I would watch Halloween on Halloween.
But April
But
15th. April 15th.
If
Tax
it's
Day.
April 15th and I watched Alien, I would say this movie is better than Halloween because, even though I love Halloween, I look at characters, I look at story, I look at nuance and execution of fear and claustrophobia and the set design, the creature design, the haunted house aspect, the shadows, the corridors, like everything that is scary about Halloween is equally and or more scary about Alien. The suspense is better.
Ooh,
The characters are definitely better.
subjective.
Okay, it's subjective, but I think Alien relies more on suspense than Halloween does. So therefore, I think the suspense is more of a character in Alien than it is in Halloween. Suspense is probably the biggest aspect of Alien. It's not so much gore, it's not horror, it's not even really science fiction. It's suspense, what you're not seeing, what you see at the last second. Everything about Alien is more A class. And I think Halloween kind of suffers from being a low budget and being, 12, 15 people on crew, and the art director and the set designer is also the guy that's making lunch runs and probably helping with script direction and all that stuff. So I think that doesn't play into my decision, because Alien is obviously higher budget and the director is way more experienced at the time. Script is more complex. The characters are more complex. There's more characters. So, yeah, I think all those things would make Alien a better movie. Now, for Halloween, no, I'm going to watch Halloween.
But for April 15th.
But for April 15th, I think Alien is a better movie. I tried to pick something that was kind of in the same genre, because Alien is kind of a giallo in space, if you will.
Yeah.
I mean, you do know who the killer is the whole time, but you're really not sure what it is, what it looks like, what it's going to do, how
it's capable of.
it behaves, what it's capable of. Every minute you know this character, the more mystery there is about this character. Its own biology becomes its horror. Its biology becomes its weapon. There's just so much about that movie. I think it's a good argument. Are you going to say yes? Probably not. But I think it holds up.
Well, if he just rolled over and gave up, this wouldn't be a very
Right.
good episode.
Good night, everybody. Here's the thing about Alien. You say it's good because of the suspense, and it is a suspenseful movie. But you specifically downplayed the gore of the movie and the sci-fi nature of the movie. And right away, I'm going to say this is a gory sci-fi movie that is also suspenseful. And
Yeah.
for me, that's a demerit just personally because I'm not a big sci-fi fan. Like it's a hurdle I have to overcome. It is the subtitles of our time for me, right? Like as Travis doesn't like subtitles when he watches a movie, I don't like sci-fi when I watch a movie. So it has to be a hurdle that I clear to get past that to watch the movie. And just like there are good enough movies to get Travis to watch subtitled movies, this is a good enough movie to get me to watch it, even though it is sci-fi. But it takes more effort, personally, for me to get excited to watch the movie. Once we're there, once the movie has begun, the thing I would point to is the audience limiting gore and violence in Alien versus the nuanced, underplayed, barely visible on screen violence in Halloween. And I think that when we talk about the Jasonification of Michael Myers and what that does to the franchise and the loss of nuance, it's also an increase in brutality, like an active, affirmative increase in the brutality of the character. Whereas in the original Halloween, you can show that movie, even unedited, to an 11 or 12-year-old kid and just be like, hey, there's a couple of boobs in this movie. So just be prepared for that. It's not traumatic to the audience in the way that a gory, violent movie like a Jason movie or the Alien movie with the chest burst and the blood and the guts, right? Like there's an advantage to the original Halloween in the underplayed violence that you lose when you compare it even to a Friday the 13th, where suddenly you go from an 11 or 12-year-old kid to like, well, you probably ought to be 14, 15, 16 before you really like delve into all these very violent movies. And Alien, I would say, suffers from that. So unfortunately, on tax day, I'm still watching Halloween. I'm still showing Halloween to most people because I don't have to worry about my audience as much.
Well, I don't know. I don't see it as violent gore.
Okay. Well, let's leave it up to
Okay.
the listener to decide whether Dan is successful or not.
Okay.
Because you guys aren't going to agree.
No.
I mean, we could go back and forth.
But I love Halloween too, so I'm not trying to change his mind.
Well,
so you go.
my turn. First of all, I have to say it is very difficult to find. At first we said 10 movies. It's very difficult to find 10 movies that are better than Halloween. I love Halloween. It's great. It's a fantastic movie. Is
It's
it
fantastic.
Is it perfect? No, but it is also it pains me to criticize it. So, with that said, Dan, you don't like sci-fi. That's fine. You don't like, you like the understated gore, not as much gore, right?
Unless it's
How-
Fulci.
How about a movie that has all of the brilliant, massive undertaking to shoot? It's shot beautifully. It's just like in Halloween, the town is a character. The location of this movie is also a character. But the suspense happens more in isolation. The Shining.
The Shining is a hell of a movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's gorier, but not much. The thing about The Shining,
I think it's bloody but not gory, if that makes sense.
yeah. There's no limbs.
It's certainly disturbing at times.
But a lot of the blood is kind of not supernatural, but like in the minds.
Mhm.
So it's not really gory. But it is
It's not
bloody.
gory.
Yes,
Yeah.
A lot of
definitely
blood, not a lot of gore. There is that rotting lady,
That's
Yeah.
the one I was thinking of.
Which
That's
is,
kind of
you
the
know,
most disturbing part, I think.
kind of gory, not gory, gross.
And the death of the
But wait, I mean, is that really a bad thing, though?
No, it's
so
just
he takes that axe right to the, like it's pretty.
yeah, the axe
it's pretty rough.
is brutal. But
Yeah.
I would say the brutality of Halloween versus the brutality of The Shining, the only difference really is the lighting. When
Mhm.
the groundskeeper guy gets killed, it's in full view, full light, and it's an effective scene because it is so just jarring and violent. The thing that would slow me down to say that The Shining is as good as Halloween, because I wouldn't say it's better. At best you're playing for a tie here. The thing about The Shining, it's kind of a narrative mess in places. The ending
Okay.
loses a lot of people because you didn't earn the ending of The Shining. Halloween, narratively, I think the original one, on the face of it, earns everything that it does. And not only does it earn the final ending, which is equally as powerful to The Shining, but a lot more sensical. The thing about the Halloween ending and the way that they crescendo to it, you're telling yourself as a 70s audience, that should be enough. Well, that should be enough. Well, that should be enough. And then when he gets up and he's gone at the end, what you've been through with him and with Laurie and this repeated, physical punishment that he's endured and then the bullet wounds, and he still gets up. It's not a non sequitur. And if it seemed like at the time you were watching it for the first time that it was some kind of unexpected twist, if you went back and thought about it, you'd be like, well, he did take the knitting needle and he did take the knife and he did get shot a lot. Like, you can see the evidence that he was more than human building up throughout the movie, and just the reason it would be a big twist at the end was because you hadn't let yourself acknowledge that the evidence was pointing toward him being supernatural as opposed to being human. Juxtapose that with the ending of The Shining, where suddenly he's in a photograph maybe that should have been there the whole time.
Yes.
And it's just like, what are we doing here, guys? Like, where did our attention to the narrative and source material go? Why are we here? Why is this picture here? It's intentionally confusing to the point that it feels unsuccessful.
I agree. However, I feel like The Shining suffers from that that kind of that subplot, or that just kind of feeling that Nicholson has been there before.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
Which you could earn that, You could
but
spend the whole movie building to that if you wanted that to be your big ending, but they don't do that.
Right. No, I'd rather cut it.
Yeah.
Honestly. And have everything else about The Shining as, happen the way it happens, and it's a perfect movie. With Halloween, it also suffers from some deficiencies that are mostly continuity for me.
The deficiencies in Halloween are the kind of deficiencies that, if you are interested in filmmaking, you can write off as, inherent to the budget and time constraints of an independent movie.
Yes.
But
They
you
make
could
it
say
like
that about a
15
lot
days or
of
something.
movies that are unsuccessful. And the thing about Halloween's deficiencies as far as continuity go, for an uninitiated viewer on a first watch, they've hidden the mistakes in plain sight in a lot of ways in the editing room, to the point that it might take you the second watch before you realize, why were they in the car for 3 hours and the alarm's been going off for 9? The stuff that they managed, what they cobbled together in editing from the limited footage they had, created enough of a cohesive story that you can keep the action moving and kind of distract the audience from your flaws.
And I would say that you have to make a conscious effort to just overlook it and enjoy the movie when you're watching Halloween.
Yeah. But in Shining, like, these light switches keep moving, and I just can't figure it out.
Well, see, that's because The Shining is
Wendy Theory.
The Shining is not what you think it is on first watch at all. And it isn't until someone introduces you to, and you are receptive to, the Wendy Theory that you really appreciate The Shining.
I think the biggest issue with The Shining is it's the classic too many chefs in the kitchen. You have a Stephen King book, which is probably pretty perfect in its own.
Yeah, I like the movie
Well,
better.
I mean,
In
when
the
you
end.
think, no, movie aside, it's considered a classic Stephen King story. It's not what was filmed.
Not at all.
So you're
not even
basically getting two versions of The Shining in one movie because you're getting Kubrick's interpretation of the book with his added stuff from the script, and then the underlying undertone possibility of a third injection of an idea that could or could not be there.
Oh,
So
it's a 100%
I'm
there.
being devil's advocate here. I believe that it was done purposely. So that makes it 3 movies, because that's what makes the ending so confusing. Because it's not the ending from the book, per se. The book is just a ghost story. At face value, it's just a ghost story.
with some really odd supernatural elements in the third act.
Right. The movie touches on the ghost story, makes the hotel kind of possessed in a way of these, or haunted.
Yeah.
But also kind of touches on reincarnation and or purgatory. Like there's this whole idea of him always being there. The greenskeeper before him, or the hotel watcher before him, killed his family because he went insane, but they're all still there. Are they ghosts? Was he always there? Like there's a whole weird thing going on there. It makes it very complex and very interesting, and makes it a constant watch. Like you can watch that movie 5 times and see 5 different movies if you really want. That's what makes it awesome. That was one of my other movies I was going to suggest. So when you said it, I was like, okay. But the Wendy Theory is the deciding factor for me. If that was done purposely, and if all that is really there,
I believe it was.
which I believe it is, then that makes that movie leaps and bounds beyond the book and leaps and bounds beyond Halloween because of the complexity of it and the ballsiness of doing that. Like selling it as Jack Nicholson as the possessed, or the haunted character.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you're watching the movie, believing that the son is the actual focal point of this, but then at the end you find out they were always there. And then the third theory is Wendy actually is the insane one, and everything else is happening in her head.
Mm-hmm.
That, to me, makes it a pretty damn good movie.
So I think Kubrick, he took the book The Shining and said, this is hot garbage, and threw it out the window, and he made a movie which was his.
Mm-hmm.
Like there is, I forget I was like watching a YouTube video or whatever. There's a specific point where, like, in the book they're driving in, say for example, in a yellow car.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever. And in Kubrick's movie, in the first scene, you see a yellow car on the side of the road crashed, because that's him saying, this ain't gonna be like the book, people.
Mm-hmm.
It's not.
And that's why Stephen King hates the movie.
And that's why Stephen King
Right.
hates the movie. But it's Kubrick's. It's not Stephen King's. It's Kubrick's.
Well, that's why
Which
it
in a
says
lot of
Stanley
ways
Kubrick.
sounds like the Rob Zombie version of Halloween.
Yeah,
Kind of.
but
good.
yeah, but
Right.
Hey, so the thing is, I think that from what you've told me of the Wendy Theory, it's a bunch of bullshit.
It's not, though.
Because it depends on, from what you said, something being relayed to Wendy on a phone call that we see explicitly. But the information being relayed via that phone call is not seen explicitly. So if it was the linchpin of the story, why isn't it part of the phone call that we see? So that from the face of it, right at the outset, I'm just like, okay, it's a fun theory, but it's bullshit because it's not in the movie, and it would be in the movie if it was part of the movie. If you were to allow for that kind of information, the information that isn't in the movie, but could affect the outcome of the movie as a hypothetical, a proposed, alternate viewing of The Shining as if this thing happened, but it didn't. But what if it did? How would it affect things? That's a fine exercise, but that doesn't mean it's in the text of the movie, even if coincidentally later points of the plot could be connected by this thing that's not in the movie, because it's not in the movie.
Well,
however,
Wendy's insanity cannot be front and center on the nose, because the point of The Shining is to watch the movie as if Nicholson is the crazy one.
But you could have
to watch
Nicholson.
You have to watch it that way first in order for the Wendy theory to hit you.
But see, that would be
as
fine.
hard as it does.
But it would hit you just as hard if during the phone call he just said, "Hey," and he said, "There's a story where these guys killed each other up here. Isn't that crazy? Okay, I'll see you at dinner." Right? Like, that doesn't take away from Jack Nicholson's entire arc on the main level reading of The Shining. And it would leave the door more open to interpretation for the Wendy theory if it was actually a thing that wasn't just come up with on the internet. But I will propose to you that just as you could see a fun theoretical exercise within the confines of The Shining, you could see the same thing in Halloween. And so I present to you the off-the-cuff Loomis theory, where Loomis, after 20 years of trying to convince the world that he was a great psychiatrist and this little kid that never talks was not sexually triggered into a rage kill of his sister, but instead the literal personification of evil, he, in his spare time, coordinated subtly the training of Michael Myers in hand-to-hand combat and evasive driving. Okay. He facilitated, a transfer at a time that he knew the security of the thing was going to be vulnerable, and he coordinated with Michael to allow an escape that would then provide him with a car he knew how to drive, so that Loomis could then express what a great doctor he was, having predicted all these problems, and then gone to Haddonfield to stop Michael Myers from what calamity he knew he would cause, because they'd discussed it and practiced for it. And then, during all of this calamity, Loomis, in on the whole thing, distracts the county sheriff by keeping him at the Myers house, where he knows Michael will not be while he performs all these murders, because if he doesn't perform the murders, then Loomis wasn't right. And then, once Loomis knows that the time is right and enough murders have taken place, he then alerts the police to the presence of Michael and the presence of the car, which he should have seen the whole time. And in the great finale, with the police present so that he has witnesses, he uses blanks to scare Michael.
Oh my God.
Who then leaps off the top thing as they planned, lands on the ground long enough for anyone who's around to see him hit the ground, and then skitters away to make Loomis look like a fucking genius and to get his end, which is escape from federal custody.
Okay.
It's all there in the text if you just add stuff to the text.
You just presented a textbook straw man argument against the Wendy theory. You are comparing the Wendy theory to something that you can just pull out of your butt on the spot.
Well, my butt is rather full of wonderful ideas. This was not a straw man argument. A straw man argument would be if I presented a flawed version of the Wendy Theory and then argued against it. Instead, I presented the actual Wendy Theory as I saw it on that video you sent me, and then a similar Halloween argument. The problem here is that the Wendy Theory has no more standing than a YouTube video, and guess what? Most people listening to this are watching it via a YouTube video. So here's the thing. If you make up stuff at the beginning of a story that's not there, and you make it supported by later coincidence, it's invalid, as are both theories.
It was very interesting.
I think that the disagreement here is stemming from, Dan, your lack of...
Keep in mind, he hasn't even seen the thing we
exactly.
watched.
That's the point.
He hasn't seen it.
We're arguing two different things because I have seen the Wendy Theory and I have seen the movie again after watching
And the examples.
the Wendy Theory with the examples, and
that are in plain sight.
And I have done I've put in the time to give this theory a chance, and I believe it to be true.
That was really awesome what you did there,
And
Dan.
you are arguing against this theory without actually having given it the time of day. And the only thing that you can do is make a straw man against it. And therefore, I win.
The thing is with what Dan said, because that was very long, drawn out, really improv.
I just let him go.
Yeah.
I
was
hit
great.
every high point of
Yes.
Loomis's arc.
But the only difference is, and I think this comes from the fact that you haven't watched what we watched, everything you said is not in the movie. Everything you said is just conveniently something you made up that could make up for missed time or whatever. The only thing that's not in this shining movie that supports the Wendy Theory is the power of suggestion that you're saying didn't happen on the phone call. I need to rewatch the documentary or whatever to see if that's even talked about, because every single thing else is addressed
It's
in
absolutely
the film
there.
on screen, not speculation, not meetings in a cafeteria where Loomis had Michael trained how to drive. Like, all that stuff was great, but it's not supported by any imagery in the actual film. It's just like
It's
something that you made up.
speculation. Yes.
The stuff that comes with the Wendy Theory is based on things you saw on film, not stuff that is happening in her head and what she's thinking, but it's actual things that are on screen, which makes it look like Kubrick did it on purpose.
But see, the problem is that Kubrick is a good enough director that he will make choices visually to create both, one, continuity between scenes, especially when setting up shots in different parts of, say, a giant hotel over, say, like a 3-year shoot. So there will be subtle differences that he can't control, that he will work his way around as best he can. But he's also going to create situations that make a viewer uneasy. And some of the things that you've pointed out in the past would be great things that you would do to make a viewer uneasy without explicitly telling them, you should feel uneasy right now. Instead, you've just changed the background subtly to where your brain goes, wait, this isn't right, but I don't know why this isn't right. But the skill of Kubrick in making an audience feel like that doesn't necessarily validate the theory that connects all these things together. And the problem is, the fundamental thing that I saw looking up the Wendy Theory in my first toe dip related to that phone call with Wendy
You're only
and what had to be seen. And that's as far as I had to go, because I realized if it's not in the text, if it's not in the movie, if it is not explicitly said, but the theory relies on the fact that it is an explicit part of the story.
I don't think it does, though.
That's how it was presented in the thing I was reading. So here's what I'll tell you. At some point in the future, I will
the phone
explore.
Call, it doesn't depend on that.
I will eventually explore the Wendy Theory. It's just who has time, because you know how detailed I'm going to be destroying every argument within that video.
We just
it's
spent
gonna
4
take
hours
me
watching
days.
a movie we saw 3 times
I would love it.
this season.
I would love for you to destroy it.
But
For
here's
real.
the thing about my
Yeah.
Loomis theory that I off the cuff went through it, but I've been thinking about it for years, because if it had been the Bat Dan version of Halloween 2018, I might have gone down that road with Loomis. But of course,
No,
he's
that makes
not
sense.
available, right? So maybe if it's 1988 instead of 2018. Maybe we do that with Loomis because there's enough there that is just unexplained that if you are going with the plot with him as the hero, everything kind of makes sense, but there's just gaps. But if you would, at any point in that narrative, stop and think, Loomis certainly knows all the things he needs to know to be in all the right times, all the right places, and yet still isn't successful enough to prevent any of this calamity. And at the end of the movie, all he is right the whole time. So the only thing that I added that really is like the Wendy phone call, not in the explicit text, instead of him saying, well, someone maybe gave him lessons, maybe that someone is Loomis. And then, the blanks, we assume those are real bullets, but we don't know. Those could be blanks. That would make it more like the scene that they lifted that blocking from in Knife of Ice. Spoilers for Knife of Ice from 1972. And, I mean, there's really not much else you'd have to add, right? Loomis is the one who's in the car at the escape. Did Loomis set that up? Or was it just them following the law? Well, that part's not explicitly said, but if you go with the one Wendy phone call bit, the one assumption that isn't in the text, and that assumption is just that Loomis is setting this up for his own self-aggrandizing. That's the only pill you have to take to get into. Suddenly everything seems a little more suspicious the way he acts. Why does he stand outside that house for so long and not do anything? With a car right down the road. Why does he finally come to the rescue just in time for one witness to see him be a hero and yet still not help them apprehend Michael Myers? And the retcon stuff, I mean, obviously with the newer series, they've done a lot of work to add detail as to what happened after the movie to explain how they apprehended him. But that's not in this movie. This movie, he's gone.
True.
And maybe he's a spirit ghost, But what's more plausible? I mean, if we're going hard plausibility, what is more plausible? That he is some kind of super demonic, evil apparition that can just exist in the ether? Or that he never got shot?
That someone highly competent is helping him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the only thing that I would say, and the last thing that I will say, is the difference, I think, between your theory and the Wendy theory is, you take the Loomis theory takes things that you assumed and turns them on their head, right? And it depends on things that you see not being as they are, as you see them. They're not as you see them, right? Like with the blanks. You assume they're real bullets, but are they? Right? In the Wendy theory, you see things that don't make sense through the entire movie. And then when you watch the movie again through the lens of the Wendy theory, now everything that you saw that didn't make sense makes sense.
But to your point, you see a man shot 6 times and he doesn't die. And you see a man carrying a gun with a permit, standing outside a house alone, smiling to himself, despite the fact the clue he needs to help find this mysterious killer is within his eye line the entire time. And he doesn't act. So, much like your Wendy theory, you're seeing things that don't make sense on the film.
All right, cool. So we agree that there's things in Halloween that don't make sense.
Unless.
Why are you taking shots at Halloween now, Dan?
I love Halloween.
See, I would just chalk it up as a low budget film. They made it in 18 days.
Yeah,
and
me
they
too.
just didn't follow
Yeah, but
continuity.
then The Shining, they shot it over the course of a bunch of years in a bunch of
it's
different
really
parts of the same
unfair.
hotel. So it's
really
like,
unfair.
Stanley Kubrick had entire electrical systems, drywall removed, spackled, repainted.
Actually, technically,
when he could have just moved the couch.
Travis. No, that's not
No,
true.
he just moved
When
everything.
when they say like
And
the
then put it
lights,
back.
the light switches were here and now they're not. It's not like he had to have them removed and spackled and stuff. He could have shot the wall doesn't have light switches in it, right?
Right.
And he could have for this shot put a plate on the wall.
Mhm.
There's no electrical. There's no real light switches. It just looks like light switches.
Right.
And you put it up for that shot. You shoot it and you take it down.
Okay.
Doesn't have to be like drywall repair and like moving electrical systems. I'm sure they didn't do that. It's just wherever they wanted a light switch, where there wasn't one, they put a fake one. And then they purposely took it down
No, I agree that
for another shot.
could possibly be it as well.
Which is a
But
great way to
why?
create.
But why?
But why?
There's a good explanation for that.
why?
it's
the
the
Wendy
Loomis
theory.
theory.
Right.
Yeah, I got you.
But also, we're not talking about a set. This is a real existing building with
With a
real
bunch of
existing light
rooms that are
fixtures.
probably duplicate, and so when they have to shoot in a different room than they did for the last
This-
take, maybe the
The scene I'm
electrical's in a
talking
slightly
about is a
different place.
grand ballroom, major atrium of this
Yeah.
building. It's not one of the hotel rooms that you can make 10 of. Like, this was where he's typing. I'm typing when I'm in here, when I'm not in here. That scene is in a major atrium of that building that is you could go in today and see where those light switches are if you wanted to.
That's true. We should do that.
So it's not
Actually,
like,
that would be cool. You guys should visit that. And then while you're there, you can realize that if you were trying to make a movie about a man going insane, you might do things like move light switches around or whatever else they do in the atrium without having to reach for this alternate theory that's a fun theoretical intellectual exercise, but not related at all to the things that happen in the movie.
Listen,
And
Wendy
equally
with Munchausen syndrome is so much better
and
than
equally,
Jack Nicholson going
I was gonna
insane.
say, and equally as plausible, if you were making a movie about a woman going crazy, you would do
an
all the same
abused
things.
woman
You would do all the same
with
things.
Munchausen
All
syndrome.
right, let's move on.
Yes, okay.
We're not gonna. Dan's not gonna.
But that was really
not
interesting.
gonna budge.
That could be a
Dan
whole
really.
episode.
Dan really should
Yes.
give Wendy Theory the time
This
of day.
just in. We will revisit the Wendy Theory.
We will
Yeah.
eventually revisit the Wendy Theory. And in the meantime, if you have to watch Halloween 78 for the third time this year, George and Travis, go in looking at Loomis this time and wonder to yourself, like, is he on the level?
I've
I-
always wondered that, but I always just thought it was. I chalked it up as.
I said it last week. I was like, I'm not 100% sure that this Loomis guy is a.
Well, they
you
touched
know.
on it with Sartan. Like a
Yes,
lot.
they did.
Basically, Sartan is the Loomis theory.
Yes.
A little bit, but he's interesting. Sartan has more nuance than you'd think he would, because he doesn't necessarily seem like hell-bent on evil so much as he is like understanding evil at any cost, including violence to other people.
Right.
Like willingness to let Michael do his thing so that he can witness it as Loomis did and understand it. It's just a slightly different reading.
Controlled
Okay.
experiment.
Travis, do you have any others? Any other movies?
Well, I tried to go like the route of like the stalker.
In the end, it's a
Genre.
fun exercise.
Yeah.
The thing about Halloween is it's always the right answer if you want to watch a movie with your friends, because it's not too gross for the people that can't do gross. It's not too sexy for the people that can't do sexy. It's scary, but not too... It's not The Exorcist, right? Like, you're not going to give people nightmares. It's like the perfect balance of all the things for a spooky but not too scary, violent but not too violent, sexy but not too sexy movie for the widest possible audience of adult viewers that you can cast. And until somebody else can find me an 85-minute movie that is just as effective and just as fun, I'm going to say happy Halloween, everybody.
Yeah. Terminator was my other guess.
Terminator is fun.
I never saw Terminators.
It's that same premise. So, yeah.
I'll be back.
We'll talk about it when we do Terminator.
Yeah, I guess we will.
What are we doing next week, guys?
What are we doing next week?
Do we want to finish out with our post fall break slasher like we did with Prom Night last year, or do you want to go straight to something like Showgirls?
You mean like with Sleepaway?
Well, that's what Sleepaway would be my
Okay.
Something like
Might as well.
Showgirls.
I'm avoiding showgirls like COVID, so
Well, I would be happy to do a little postscript on fall break and do Sleepaway Camp, which is one that I know we've had some interest from some potential guests. I'll cast a net and see if anybody gets ensnared in it. But Sleepaway Camp from 1983 would be a really interesting kind of way to wrap up the fall season and move toward less slashery things.
I'm down.
yeah, that might be the way to go.
So as I hinted at the end of the last Halloween episode, we are doing Sleepaway Camp for our next regular episode of the show. I can't guarantee that it won't be the last episode we do once George has seen Sleepaway Camp. He may be forever changed. That may be the end of us. But thank you for joining us on the Remedial Film Class Halloween special, as I so valiantly defended our friend Halloween against an onslaught of really good movies that aren't quite as good to watch with your friends as Halloween. I think that Loomis Theory is hold more water than I expected it to. But I look forward to hearing from you in the comments on YouTube, and hit me up on the Facebook group. Let's chat about the Loomis Theory. Let's not chat about Sleepaway Camp until George has seen it. Come on, guys. Let's not spoil anything. Hopefully, that isn't the end of us. But if it is, I mean, come on. Is there a better way to go out than Sleepaway Camp? I can't think of one. Except maybe Showgirls.